More importantly, he paid for the kiddush yesterday. That's very important to the people who attended.
I feel nervous.
Really, it's really grown.
Wait.
I know it'll. The room won't be big enough.
No, well, the room won't be big enough. When people start coming.
Or unless Kenny, I thought that idea of doubling and then.
Yeah, well, that's not my decision. Remember, I made a
I
suggestion.
know, but that's a perfect situation.
I'm hopeful
Not
that,
only that, but it's a return to the status quo ante.
not totally.
If we have the minyan and the shear in the basement,
It would work for us.
Yeah.
It means that the 8:30 minion has to be willing to switch their location.
but they were always in the show. 8 o'clock. It was never 8:30. It was 8.
We've had many.
And they
Yeah,
were
but they're not
always-
going to go back to 8.
All right, I don't care.
Okay.
I go wherever you tell me to go.
I'm going to start with the learning sponsors. Friends of Nina Monester, Nechama Aznabad Yitzchak Aharon. Many friends of Stephen Vigdor, Lezech Nishmat Simcha Melech Ben Meir Leib Halevi. Friends of Marcy Kurtz in memory of her great niece Leah Bracha Bas Rivka. Isaac and Evelyn Blachor in memory of his sister Chaya Rachel Bas Isser. A month of learning by Mark Linder in memory of his mother Yona Bat Zalman Leib. Rabbi Isaac Schmerler in memory of his wife Menya Sima Bat Yitzchak Isaac. Friends of Marilyn Schmerler in memory of Menya Sima Bat Yitzchak Isaac. Sorry. Gary and Marsha Schrager in memory of his father David Ben Yosef and his mother Freda Bat Hendel. Marsha Federbush in memory of her husband Oriel Pinchas Ben Arav Shimon. Andrea and David Dolmy in memory of her father Tzvi Herschel Hillel Ben Avraham. A week of learning by Shelley and Oscar Moll in memory of her father Shlomo Ruvain Ben Binyamin. Vicky Rabinovich Fish and Larry Fish in memory of her father Chaim Zusya Ben Shlomo Ben Sion and her mother Ita Bat Tzvi and his father Avram David Ben Shlomo Raphael. Donna Goldstein in memory of her father Aryeh Yehuda Ben Moshe Shmuel. Okay, today is the 21st, right? And we have a day of learning by Hilda Merwis and Shelley Orgel in memory of their father, David Ben Pesach. That's right. And that is it. We also keep in mind for a Refuah Shlema, we've been saying for Peretz Semach Ben Yaakov Yitzchak, Moshe Reuven Ben Sima Tebela, and we're adding today Yitzchak Isaac Ben Devorah. Okay. May Hashem is having a Aliyah, Crank Rafia, Velti Yeshua Shem Matzliah, and the Chol B'nai Israel, good Gebenshtia. Okay. When somebody asks me to include them for Refuah, somebody that's here.
He doesn't want us to know who he is. He just wants us to pray for him. Okay.
If you look on the list in the show bulletin, there are a number of people that just give their Hebrew name and not their English name. Okay. Yesterday we had a fun time in the Gemara Shir, right? When we talked about a number of issues that indicated when the husband again would make a claim against his bride. Okay. And the very bottom of the last Amud raised the point, Amar Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak, Lo kem akat mardut midrabana. Okay, that's what he indicated that they were Makos Mardus, okay, rebellion against the rules of the rabbi. And I want to come back to what Sid raised the other day, or actually he raised it Shabbos, Sid, right? Okay, on the fact that it was Motzi Shemra, okay, and that was the punishment, okay? We may come back to that issue and we may answer some of the questions that actually came up in Shabbos Shiur in terms of what the procedure was in terms of the Basin situation, okay? I do want to point out that as we go through the Gemara today, when we get about 3/4 down the Amud, we will need to look particularly at a Rashi, okay, today, because because of the fact that Rashi's explanation on the situation is, I don't want to call it unique, but he gives a interesting pshat that I want us to pick up on, okay? So I will tell you where that is when we get to that point, okay? And we will then, so long as I can keep my notes clear, and I'm looking at them right now, I do want to grab, before I start, a Chumash. Because I want to be able to, when we do a Gezerah Shava, I want to tie it in to the Psukim directly, okay? And not everybody. I know, Art Scroll always, that's an advantage of Art Scroll, that it always cites the Psukim in the notes, okay?
Well, it's also on the source of at the bottom of it.
Yeah. Okay, well, that's just the source.
No,
That's
that's
source.
okay.
Okay.
Right, never mind, back there.
Okay, so what happens? A Mem Vav Amud Aleph. Okay, so right, Mem Vav Amud Aleph is where we are today, right? Okay, so the Gemara really starts off with the fact that previously we have suggested that maybe there's a difference in the situation of the claimant, the husband making his claim, as to whether he's had relations with her or not. That's what the Gemara, or at least certain opinions in the Gemara, seem to present. Okay, so that's where so we needed to understand that, so that we could understand and start off Mem Vav Amud Aleph. Rav Papa Amar, he says, Mai Baal. Okay, what is this when we say that they have relations? Lokeh. Okay, that then that only under those circumstances perhaps he would be receive Malchus in such a situation. Dikatani Hatam, is that what's really taught there? Mammon, says Rav Papa. He's giving a whole nother example. Okay, maybe when it says Lokeh, we're not talking about actual Malchus, we're talking about money.
Hit him with a phone.
Okay, right? Vakare le lemamon Malchus, asks the Gemara. And do we, I'm going to say, normally call, when we refer to, okay, the phrase Malchus, are we normally referring to monetary activity? And he says, yes, Vahatnan. But here, for example, I can give you an example in another Mishnah. HaOmer, one who says, Chatzi achi alai, okay, that he makes a claim and says, I will donate half of my value, okay, Torah value, because Erech, remember, is clearly defined by Torah as personal value based on age and gender, okay? So what happens? Notain chatzi erko. He is expected to give half that his I'll say personal value, Torah value. Rebbe Yossi Rebbe Yehuda Omer, what does he say? Lokeh v'notein erech shalem. You, so to speak, I'm going to say hit in quotation marks, okay? And you make him pay the full personal Torah value.
Still, if it meant mammon, it should have said mammon. Why does it say malchus?
Let's see. That's what we're going to see. Loke amai, that's exactly the question the Gemara just next asks, but it says malchus, loke. Why does it use that language? Amar Rav Papa, says Rav Papa, defending his, I'm going to say, colloquial usage of the phrase, loke be'erech shalem. You, so to speak, hit him with paying the fine. That's what Rav Papa is suggesting. Okay? And that he must pay the full amount of his value. Why is that? Yes, Sid?
I want to make this clear. He says I want to get half of my value. It's being rejected. He only get full, even though he admitted saying I want to get half.
He according, okay, the Gemara is going to tell us why in just a moment. Okay? But in saying that I want to give half my value, so Rav Papa is using that as an example that to say, well, we hit him with a full amount that he has to pay and not half.
Hit him with a penalty of the other half.
Said, I want to give half my value.
Right.
And the Doilim are saying.
And the based in, you can't do that. And now it's going to tell us why. Okay? So the Gemara goes, okay? My Tama, what's the reasoning? Gezerah chatzi archo atu erech chetzio. Why? Because there's a decree that says when somebody says half their value, what they're in essence saying, okay, is that atu erech chetzio, that they're giving, okay, what does that mean? Ve'erech chetzio havele ever shenishama tluya bo. That when he's basically saying, okay, that I'm want to give half my value, what he's saying is I'm giving the value of a major organ.
Half of myself.
Okay, half of myself, a major organ on which my life depends. Okay, and therefore, if he were to give half his body, okay, it's impossible. Or if he's giving a major organ, that's how I'm translating Ever Shanashamat Yabo. Okay, and a major organ that my body is dependent on, that's not possible.
So isn't it saying he really gives half, and
he claims to give half,
but with a penalty of half.
But the penalty that Chazal is giving him is he really must pay the entire amount.
Because he could slip in the wording. Theoretically, he could say, I would give half of my value. But he might inadvertently say, I'll give the value of half of myself. That's so they make a gezerah on the first wording so that we don't let people make that mistake.
That's to me. That's what I understand what Art Scroll is suggesting. I find that a little dachuk.
That's what the word.
That's all I'm saying. I'm saying I find that a little dachuk.
We didn't even look at
it. All right. No, I did yesterday afternoon. Okay. That's why somebody asked me, why aren't I in Shalashudas? I said, because I'm sitting here with the Art Scroll looking, and then at night, Saturday night, that's when I had prepare again with the Koran. So that's one. Anyway, go be that as it may. That answers your question, Sid.
Yeah, in other words, he's specifying a specific.
Well, not necessarily, but the rabbis understood it to mean if he's saying I'm giving half my value, it's as if he's saying I'm giving half my body, and therefore what the implication is, the value of half my body would mean I would lose a major organ.
You can't cut you in half without living.
Okay.
So if you want to only give 25, say I'll give 25. Why you gotta give?
Okay, that would be different. That would be different.
Based on how we express themselves.
Exactly. Okay. All right. So what happens? Now the Gemara comes back and says, wait a second. Tanu Rabbanan, says the Braita. We have language in the Pasuk that we're now going to darshan. Okay? All right, and this was the pasuk we've read previously. Okay, so I'm not going to read that pasuk right now. Okay, but I will open up the Chumash at this
If
point.
you have Art Scroll, it's the first pasuk in the margin, and
Okay,
all the subsequent psukim are also brought.
right. Okay, so
You have to be able to see it.
Well, that is a problem. You want me to get you a chumash?
That's
No.
about
I can
validity
just
of the
about make an
Ashkel, the Hebrew. He brings the pasuk in the text.
Yeah.
As part of his explanation.
mhm. And the Koran tends to bring it. Some
And
in the
footnote.
English, it cites the English of the pasuk, not the Hebrew,
And
but
then
it
brings
cites
a
the whole
footnote.
place
Right.
in the text.
In the text.
In the text. Right, that's a point.
Okay.
Okay, so what happened? Okay, right.
Unsure some may have
Right. What's the verse?
That's smaller yet.
No, just tell me what
Yud
pasuk.
Ches.
Deborah-
Yud Ches, Yud Ches.
Yud Ches, Yud Ches.
Okay. V'lakhu ziknei ha'ir hahu et ha'ish v'yisru oto. So it says v'yisru oto, and the pasuk right after that is v'anshu oto me'ah kesef. So it's Yud Chet and Yud Tet.
Right.
Okay, so what happens? Our Braita says, Tanu Rabbanan, Va'anshu Oto, the fact that that pasuk, okay, the Torah or does not cite the specific pasuk, but anyway, it should. Okay, Zemamon, that tells us that that's money, right? Because the pasuk says Va'anshu Oto Me'ah Kesef. It spells out a monetary amount. V'yisru, and the pasuk Yud Chet, Zemalkot. That tells us that he gets the punishment of the flogging. So the Gemara says, Bishlema v'anshu, that's acceptable regarding the pasuk that cites the words v'anshu and gives us, we said, an amount, right? Zemamon, right? Because now they cite, the Gemara cites the pasuk. Dichtiv v'anshu oto me'ah kesef v'natnu la'avi hana'ara. Because then it cites the pasuk. Ella v'yisru zemalkot minalan. Okay, on what basis do we say that the previous pasuk that has the word v'yisru, okay, tells us it's malchus? Okay, Amar Rabbi Abahu. So Rabbi Abahu is going to now give us a gzera shava. Lamadnu yisru mi yisru. We learn yisru in one place. Our example with Yisru in another place, namely V'Yisru mi ben. That refers to the ben sorer umoreh. Okay, the young man who is a rebellious child. Okay, and therefore, what does he get? His punishment is well
So it
deserved.
depends on what he
Okay.
did wrong.
All right, uben mi ben, and then again we move another gzera shava with the language. Namely, and that ties us to the second pasuk. Okay, v'haya im ben hakot harasha. Okay, so in that case, we cite that pasuk where the word ben again is found,
And that's talking about Malchus.
and that clearly refers to Malchus.
Where he's
Okay.
subject to.
All right. So what happens? So, namely, azhara.
No, now
Okay,
to-
so that's the point. So that's how we make the connection of the word Yisru, okay, through a double Gezerah Shava.
To
It-
Malchus.
Okay, it brings us to Malchus. Okay, so that's Rabbi Abahu's drasha. Okay, okay. Now what happens? Now the Gemara goes on. Azhara lemotzi shem ra minalan. Now we move on. So wait a second. If somebody is going to be subject to Malchus, doesn't he need a warning? Okay, so where is the warning? That's what the Gemara is asking. Azhara lemotzi shemra. a warning for the man who's making this claim and defaming her. What's the basis there? Rabbi Elazar Omer, he says, he cites a pasuk, Milo telech Rachil. So he suggests from that pasuk, you don't be a talebearer. Okay, you don't go around
Talking about other
people, right? Right. Rabbi Natan Omer, he gives a different pasuk. V'minishmeret mikol davar ra. Okay, and Rabbi Nassan is really doing a play on words here. He's saying davar ra. He understood it as dibur ra. Okay, in this case. Okay, so that's his drasha. The Rabbi Eliezer, what does he say? My tama lo amar mehai. Why? What is the reason that this one didn't say the same as the other one? In other words, why didn't Rabbi Nassan give the example that Rabbi Elazar gave? Okay, that's the question. Hahu mebayale likada Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair. Why? Because he needs it to give him the basis for something else said by Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair, v'nishmeret mikol davar ra, that one must be careful from any kind of negative thing, any kind of word. Mikan amar Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair, who darshan that pasuk, okay, to tell us is what? Al yeharher adam b'yom v'yavo lidei tum'ah b'layla. Okay, that basically one should not have certain thoughts during the day. Okay, and as a result, it would bring him to become tameh at night. So the Gemara flips now the question and asks Rabbi Natan, and as regards Rabbi Natan, my tamalo amar mahai. What's the reason that he didn't cite the pasuk that Rabbi Elazar said? Okay, hahu azhara lebeit din shelo yehe rach lazeh ukasher lazeh. Why? Because he needs it as a warning to the court that they should not be soft in regards to one situation, one person, and more stringent, okay, in regards to another person, another case. Okay, so.
He makes a pun on the word Rachil.
Okay.
Rachli.
Could be. Lo amar la'edim. Okay, so now we come back to the following. All right, we're now going to say in this court case where the husband brings his claim, who is I'm going to put in the quotes, the defendant, the father of the young woman. Okay, so just as we're thinking that the claimant, okay, supposedly has witnesses, so we're going to say that the father could have witnesses. Okay, everybody now follow as we go on from here. Okay, lo amar la'edim, when we say that the claimant, I'm going to right, I'm going to call him the recalcitrant husband. Okay, okay, all right.
You have a
Okay. Ba'u v'ha'eduni. Let's say that he speaks to these his buddies, and he tells them, "Come and testify on my behalf." Okay. V'hein me'idim oto me'alehem. Okay. If he didn't say to them, "Come and testify on my behalf," but they came to testify on their own. All right. Hu eino lokeh ve'eino noten me'aslaim. In that case, he does his claim, even if it was to prove false, he does not get malchus, he does not pay, nor does he have to pay the 100 pieces of money. Okay. And the Gemara goes on, he v'zoma meha makdimin lebeit hakskila. She and her false witnesses then proceeded to the location, or his, okay, or the fathers, in other words.
No,
Okay.
no, or the grooms.
Okay, either way.
Whoever,
Okay.
if anybody that
Whoever's
testifies.
Fine, so,
falsely,
right, the
gets
false
the
witness.
penalty
Right,
that
right.
that they expect
Okay.
to be imposed.
All right, so what happens? She and false witnesses. That's all the
Right.
Gemara says. Okay,
Yeah.
doesn't spell out exactly. Okay, whose they could be. Go to the place of the skila. He v'zoma mehasal gedatach. Do you think it's she and the false witnesses go? Is that your opinion? Ella rather, he zoma meha makdimin lebeit haskila. Either she or the false witnesses go to the
Which now
place.
imply that they're the husband's
Okay,
witnesses.
right. So that's the case. Tama, the reasoning, delo amar laho, because he did not say to them, testify on my behalf. Ha, amar laho, but if he said to them to do so, af al gav delo agrinhu, even though he didn't, so to speak, hire them, okay, pay them, la afuke mid Rabbi Yehuda, but this comes to exclude the view of Rabbi Yehuda, the Tanya, who taught elsewhere in the Mishnah. Rabbi Yehuda Omer says, Eino chayav ad sheyiskor edim, that he's not guilty until he actually hires these witnesses. My Tama de Rabbi Yehuda. What's the reasoning of Rabbi Yehuda? Amar Rabbi Abahu. Rabbi Abahu's explanation. He's going to again present it based on a Gzera Shava, similar language. Okay? Amar Rabbi Abahu, Atya Sima. We come to the words of a word of placing. I'm going to translate Sima there as placing for the moment. Okay? We have here in one pasuk placing, and we have elsewhere a pasuk that has referring to placing. Ktiv hacha, in one place it's written, V'sam la alilat devarim, where placing there refers to the defamer, okay? Uktiv hatam, and elsewhere it's written elsewhere, lo tesimun alav neshech, that you cannot place interest on the person. Okay, charging interest. Malahalan mamon, afkan mamon. The same way there it's referring to money, so here it refers to money. Okay, what happens? Amar Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak. He says as follows: V'chein tani Rav Yosef, Sidoni be Rabbi Shimon ban Yochai. And likewise, it's taught by Rav Yosef from Sidon, who was part of the academy of Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai. And he cites the same Gzera Shava, Atya Sima. We could bring a Gzera Shava of placing. Excuse me. Now, by Rabbi Yirmiyah. And so Rabbi Yirmiyah asks the following question on this. Okay, how, I'm going to phrase it and then go on. How might he have tried, and what way could he have paid, so to speak, and using paid in quotation marks, these witnesses to testify in his behalf?
Because the Gzera Shava says cash money.
It seems to imply that it has to be mammon, direct monetary payment. Okay, scharan bekarka mahon. What if he paid them through land? Okay, what is it? Pepachot mishave pruta mahu. What if he paid it and the amount was less than a pruta, which is not considered real monetary value? Okay. Well, we'll see. That could be a question too. Shnehem bepruta mahu, or he paid both of them.
No, he paid them one pruta
For the two of them.
Good
To the
point.
two of them. Okay.
Okay.
So what happens? By Rav Ashi. Rav Ashi also asks questions on the situation. And here's where we're going to get to Rashi. Okay. Hotzi Shemra al Hanisuin Harishonim. Okay. That maybe this husband brought his defamation I'm going to translate it, keeping Rashi in mind, their earlier marriage. Okay? Now, jump with me to look at Rashi momentarily. Okay? You'll find the Rashi, if you look in the Masoras Hashas, okay? There is that Rashi is between two examples. Okay, it's hard to read it. One is, right? It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There are 6 Masoras Hashas. Okay, it's between the 5th and the 6th one. Al Nisuin Harishonim is the Rashi. And he says, Kansa, that this husband brought her into his home. In other words, he married her. Velo hotzi, okay, shem ra. And at that point, he did not defame her, make the claim. Vigirsha, then he divorced her. Vehechzira, and then he remarried her. Ve'acharkach, and afterwards, motzi shem ra, then he defamed her. Okay, lo matzati betulim lenisuin kamai, that I didn't find her to be a virgin at the first time we married. Okay, so that's why, that's how I, right, but that's why I felt it was important to see Rashi, there's explanation of Hanisuin Harishonim, the earlier, our earlier marriage.
There's
Yeah,
statute of limitations on when he.
That's essentially what the question.
that's part of the question. Erwin, what's your question?
Right.
That's the Gemara's kasha.
This husband sounds like some book.
That's Rav Ashi's point. I think that's Rav Ashi's point. Okay, but let's go on. Mahu, what's the situation there? Furthermore, Rav Ashi asks another question. Al nisuyei echav, achiv, all right, achiv, mahu. What about that? Okay, on her marriage to the brother. In other words, there's a yibum situation. Okay, what about in that situation? So Rav Ashi tells us, Pshot mihachada, at least come to an answer on one of those questions. Datani Rabbi Yonah, now we come back, as taught by Rabbi Yonah, okay, citing a pasuk, et biti natati leish hazeh, my daughter I gave to this man, lazeh, to this, velo liyabam, and not to the yabam. Okay, so that comes to answer at least the second question that Rav Ashi raised.
The last.
The last one. Okay. Okay, so what happens? My Rabbanan, but what about the rabbis? Umay Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. What about the machloket between Rabbanan and Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov? Titania. And now the Gemara wants to come back and it's going to cite that whole machloket for us again, as taught in the Braita, namely the following. So we're returning really to the earlier machloket, which the Gemara is citing for us once more. Okay? Ketzad hotza'at shemra. How do we understand the situation that the recalcitrant husband is making this claim against this woman or young girl? Okay? Bala Beit Din. He comes to the court. Va'amar, and he says to the girl's father, Ploni, lo matzati labitcha betulim. I didn't find that your daughter was a virgin. Okay? Im yesh edim shezinta tachtav. If there are witnesses that she was promiscuous during the time that, let's say, she was betrothed to this individual, okay? Yesh la k'tuba mana, says the Gemara. She has a k'tuba of 100.
Hold the question.
Wait a second, says the Gemara. Im yesh edim shezinta tachtav, yesh la k'tuba mana. You're saying that if there were witnesses testifying that she was promiscuous during the Erusin, during the betrothal, she's still going to get at the Nisuin a ketubah of 100? Hey, bat skilai, No, she's going to get stoned. Okay? Literally. Okay? So what happens? Okay? Hachikama. This is what the Gemara comes to tell us.
Right.
Okay? Im yesh edim shezinta tachtav. If there are witnesses that claim she was promiscuous during the betrothal, biskila, then she would get punished by stoning. Zintame ikara. But if she were promiscuous before the betrothal,
And that's what the witnesses are testifying
and that
to.
may be what they're testifying, right? Yeshlak tuba mana. Then she would still be entitled,
But she gets out.
but she would still get 100. Okay, she would not get the ketubah of a virgin,
And it's
but she would get a
interesting 'cause the
ketubah nevertheless.
may have been written with 200 because they thought she was a virgin. So it's, I might have thought that that it's a mekach kais, tear up the kasuba, she gets diddly squat. But the
Okay,
Gemara is saying that he took her in, that he accepted her, he did Erusin with her. He should have examined earlier, so she gets the kasuba of a ba'ula.
okay. I was going to say it slightly different. Remember, the Gemara told us that there are times there's a difference whether you write the ksuba at the Erusin or write it at the
Yeah, but here
Nesuin.
you have to assume, because he's not going to marry her. He's
Well-
going to get rid of her during Erusin. I mean, he's not going to go to Nesuyin. He would have not have gone to court.
We
if he
don't know
wanted.
that yet.
He can't marry her anymore. He took her to court.
I don't
Her
know
fa-
that.
Her father's going to not let her go.
Well, I don't know that. All I know is the
If you
question.
sue me, I ain't giving
No,
you my
I'm
daughter.
coming back. I'm coming back to this question that ultimately, remember, we very much asked at the beginning of the Amud, im Baal or lo Baal.
Yeah, but
Okay.
this is during
We're going to come back
Erusin.
to the, yes, but that still could be the
All
situation.
right, okay.
Okay? So that's the point. In any case, so what happens? Now, we're going to change. We're going to say, the Gemara says, wait a second. How can you say that this woman is going to get, that the ketubah is going to be 100? That was our point. Okay? So what happens? Im yesh edim shezinta tachtav b'skila, zinta meikara yesh la ketubah maneh. Nimtza sheshem ra, no shem ra. That what happens if we find that the statement of defamation of her status
It's
is
untrue.
not a valid defamation of her
This
status.
is untrue.
It's untrue. Okay? Hu lokeh v'notein meyasela. Then the punishment of this husband, the recalcitrant husband, is that he gets malchus and he has to pay 100. Bein Baal uvein lo Baal, regardless of whether he had relations with her or did not have relations with her. Okay? Remember, that was part of our,
That's the
that's the
right. This is it.
Chachamim, but that's where we come back at the very beginning of the Amud.
Right.
Okay? Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov Omer. So here now we're getting back to what the machloket between Rabbanan and Rabbi Eliezer was. They say he's going to get those flogging regardless of what, okay? So Rabbi Eliezer, what is he saying? Lo ne'emru dvarim halalu ela kasher ba'al. Okay, these things are not said unless it was the fact that he actually had relations. So the Gemara now says, Bishlema Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, Hainu dichtiv. Why? Because it's written, Uba aleha ve'ekrav aleha. Okay, and this is where I want to bring the psukim. Okay, the psukim say as follows. Okay, ki kach ish isha uva aleha usnea v'sam la alilat dvarim v'hotzi aleha shem ra v'amar et ha'isha hazot lakachti ve'ekrav eleha v'lo matzati la betulim. And in English, the psukim say, if a man marries a wife and comes to her and hates her. And he makes a wanton accusation against her, spreading a bad name against her. And he said, I married this woman and I came near to her and I did not find signs of virginity on her. So that's the pasuk. Okay, so the first pasuk, okay, says Ba'eleha, and the second pasuk says Vekravaleha. Okay, so that's how we have it here in the Rabbi Eliezer's statement, citing part of the pasukim. Okay,
But he says the pasuk clearly indicates physical intimacy.
right? So that's the point. So therefore, that's what Rabbi Eliezer is saying, that it has to be Elikasha Ba'al. So that's why the Gemara says, B'shlema Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, because it specifically says in the pasuk wording that in his opinion designates a physical interaction. Okay? Ela l'Rabbanan. But whereas the rabbis who said, regardless of whether they had relations or not, Mai uvaleha ve'ekravaleha. How then do they understand these two phrases in the two psukim that Rabbi Eliezer clearly said implies in his view physical interaction? Namely, uvaleha ba'alilot. He came to her with these charges, these complaints. Ve'ekravaleha, and he was close to her. Bidvarim, okay, with his remarks, with his defamation, okay?
But they actually did not have physical
But did not
contact.
necessarily have physical, right, Ruben? Okay. Bishlema Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, right? That's understandable, the view of Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. Hainu dichtiv. Why? Because then the pasuk says, spells out, Lo matzati lebitcha betulim. I didn't find your daughter was a virgin. Okay? Ela l'Rabbanan, but according to the view of the rabbis, who just says it's words or it's claims, okay? Mai lo matzati lebitcha betulim. How then do they understand his statement who says, I did not find her to be a virgin? Okay?
But the
Name.
word Rav is a very, leading word. I mean, he approached.
So, right, so you're going to be on Rabbi Eliezer's side and not Rabbanan's side, Mel. Okay? So what happens? So how do the rabbis defend their position, their statement? Lo matzati lebitcha kishrei betulim. We did not find those that will validate, support, tokens. In other words, they didn't find witnesses to support that that perspective. That's what they're saying. Bishlem Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. Okay, that's again, we find the view of Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov more understandable and reasonable. Hainu dichtiv. Why? Because it's written ve'ele betulei biti. Okay, when he says these are the signs, that's right. You pull out the sheet. Wait till we get about a sheet. Wait a minute in this Gemara. Okay, all right. Ela l'Rabbanan. What do the rabbis do when he shows a sheet and there's nothing on it, no blood stains or not, right? Mai ve'ele betulei biti. How do they handle that phrase when then the husband claims that? Okay, what do they say? Ve'ele kishrei betulei biti. Okay, these are again the tokens, the symbols, the witnesses that support the view that she was a virgin. So, Bishlema Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. That's understandable. The view of Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov again. Why? Hainu dikativ, because again the pasuk says, "Uparshu hasimla." They actually spread out the sheet and showed a live sheet. Okay, an actual sheet. Okay, Ela l'Rabbanan. But as far as the rabbis go, Mai upirshu hasimla. How do they understand the phrase? And they spread out the sheet. How do they do it? Amar Rabbi Abahu, and Rabbi Abahu comes to the rescue again. Pirshu, okay, Masha Sam La Keditanya, Parshu Hasimla. What did they do? A double explanation, okay? In other words, instead of Parshu, spread it out, Pirshu, they examined, okay? Or they claim Masha Sam Aleha, all right? What they what they acted against her, what they placed against her, the charges, right? That's what they did. Keditanya upersu hasim la, sam la, what they presented and charged against her. That was Rabbi Abahu's darshan. Right.
Oh, very sweet.
Good, Bob. Good. Okay. Milamed shabain edim shel zeh ve'edim shel zeh, namely that the witnesses of the father and the witnesses of the husband, okay, uborurin et hadavar kisim la chadasha, and they clarify the item so that it's as clear as a clean sheet. Okay, all right, or as what's the phrase I wanted to? Okay, that's the idea. Right, same phrase. Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov Omer, what does he say? Dvarim kichtavan simla mamash.
You have to read the words.
Right? He says basically, the words are as they were written. It really means a actual sheet. What happens? Shalach Rabbi Yitzchak bar Rav Yaakov bar Giure Mishmei de Rabbi Yochanan. So now we have a message from Eretz Yisrael, okay, to clarify the Afal Gav Shalom Matzinu Bechol HaTorah Kula Shechilek Hakatuv Bein Bia Kedarka the Bia Shalo Kedarka the Makot Laonshin, even though generally throughout the entire Torah we do not find a distinction made between unnatural relations and natural relations, vis-a-vis punishments and etc. payments. Aval motzi shemra, but in regards to this example of defamation, chilek, we do find a distinction made. Okay, eino chayav ad sheyiv'o. Okay. This claim by the husband, he's not held responsible unless there were relations, all okay, in the normal manner. Shalo kedarka. Okay, so if it's right, okay. Vyotzi shemra kedarka. Okay, in other words, eino chayav ad sheyiv'ol shalo kedarko. Vyotzi shemra kedarko. All right. That basically only if it was done in a normal method can he have a valid claim. Okay, Keman, according to whom? Ikarabanan. Okay, so in other words, he has to defame her only if she had normal relations with someone else.
No,
with him.
We learned much earlier that what.
Well, wait.
Say.
Hold on. Eino chayav ad sheyiv'ol afilu shelo kedarka.
No, ad sheyiv'ol shelo kedarka.
Right.
Beyonce Shemra kedarko. He did anal intercourse and goes to court and said, "I did it the normal way."
And she didn't have no much of that.
Because we learned earlier, his taina could.
I understand that. That's how Art Scroll is explaining it.
Well, that's the text.
But I'm telling you, Koren did not explain it.
But look at the Rashi.
Okay.
Look at the last Rashi.
I understand the last
I would be interested in understanding how he takes the words in this.
I understand that. That's why I'm saying.
How can
he make his claim otherwise?
I found her not to be a virgin and didn't even try.
Let me say this. One of the biggest lessons learned over here for the Alskabar, what these guys, the idea is Shmiras Haloshin.
Okay.
I mean, the whole this is more than the action itself sometimes. Okay, and that's exactly
Okay,
what you're
the
looking for.
implication is that his claim can only be valid if he did have relations with her. That's the implication of both.
Normal relation.
Okay, normal relations, that's the implication of both explanations, even though they present it differently. Okay,
Rashi spells it
yeah,
out
I
very
see it.
clear.
I see it. Hey, come on. According to whom? Ikarabanan. If it's according to rabbis, afal gav de lo ba'al. Okay, even though he did not have
So they don't
relations.
care.
Oh, Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, or if it's quoting Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, as we go now to the next Amud, right? Okay, what happens? Idi ve'idi kedarka ba'inan. Okay, and his view is basically both this and this has to be through normal relations. Okay, okay. Ella shalach Rav Kahana mishmei de Rabbi Yochanan. So now Rav Kahana sends a message in the name of Rabbi Yochanan.
Which is clarifies.
Okay,
the previous.
clarifies, right, the situation. Eino chayav ad shiv'o kedarka. Okay, the husband would not be held responsible unless it's clear that he had normal relations with her. V'yotzi shem ra bikedarka. Okay, and then that's when he makes his defamation. Okay, defames her under that situation. Okay, now we're going to go on with the next Mishnah. Okay, I want to point out as we go into this Mishnah, there was a question. Okay, as we start the Mishnah, it says Ha'av Zakai Bebito. Okay, that the husband, the father is the one who, one case Zakai is benefits, authority. I don't like the word authority here. I think he benefits, he merits. Right. Okay. Bebito. With his daughter. Now, does anybody have a quick question on what age group we're talking about?
Two-word Rashi. It's easy.
But wait a second. People may not have looked at Rashi yet. Okay. That's the point. Are we talking about a girl that's a na'ara between 12 and 12 and a half? Or are we talking about a girl under 12?
Yes.
Okay, the answer is, and that's why Michael says, look at Rashi. But the point we're saying here is, my point is saying, notice that the Mishnah does not spell out either katana or na'ara, and that's why Rashi must come.
But because we know when she's a bogeres, she's responsible for herself.
Okay.
Prior to that, her father is responsible for her.
Not everybody. Some know it, not everybody. Okay, you're making that assumption. Okay. All right. So but I wanted us to be sensitive to the language of the Mishnah, that many other Mishnayot, it's specifically spelled out katana or na'ara, and this Mishnah did not. Okay. And so therefore, that's why Rashi, I believe, felt it necessary to spell it out for us very specifically. Okay? Both below 12 and 12 to 12 and a half. Okay? Right. All right. Now, Bikidushaha, in regards to her betrothal. Okay? What does he merit? What does he gain? Number one, he gets bekesef. One method of marriage would be through monetary gift. Bishtar, a second possible method of marriage, is through a document. Okay, ubabia, and the third is through actual relations.
Where he gives reshus to the
okay,
man.
that the man. All right. So in other words, all of those, remember, we said each one was valid deoraita, Okay, it was Rabbanan that said you needed all three. But in any case, through any of those means, the father of this girl, nevertheless, okay, he gets he's in charge. He gets the benefit. All right? Zakai b'metziata, he's also benefits and merits anything she finds. Ubamaaseh yadeha, in terms of any money she earns. Ubahafarat nidareha, and he's also responsible for nullifying her vows. Umekabel et gita, and he also receives any money if she is divorced.
While still
No, he
Right.
receives the bill of divorce.
He receives it, but right?
No,
There's no money.
no. If the naira is
If
divorced
she's-
by her husband,
If she's an
even
arusa,
if she's an
arusa and
no,
gets divorced,
she doesn't get the
he
taxes
hands the
get.
father the gift,
Right.
right? Right? But there could be monetary elements,
That's
Right,
in the
correct.
ksuba, not in the
Yes.
get.
right? Okay. Ve'eno ochel perot b'chayeha, but he does not benefit from getting any
Shame alone.
additional items. Okay.
If
Nis-
she inherits land.
Well, we'll
is
get to
the
that. We'll get to that.
ksuba.
Hold
That's
on. Hold
Naira
on.
7, that's right.
Yeah, we'll get to it. Hold on. Okay. Nisate, once she's married, however, okay, yeter alav haba'al, there is something additional that the husband does receive, namely, she'ochel perot b'chayah, that the husband gets additional benefits. He gets what we might call in English fancy usufruct. Okay, that's the phrase, right? He gets, in other words, additional items. Say she inherits something. Could be land, could be.
They think of in terms.
That's what they normally think of land, but could be.
But if she has a bank account, the husband could take the
Okay,
interest.
but what happens is she could get money too. Okay, but the husband gets the benefits. Okay, additional benefits, right? V'chaya b'mezonoteha, and the husband is responsible for her foodstuffs. Ubeparkanot, perkona, and her ransoming her if she's held captive. Ukvurata, and in her burial. Okay. Well, hopefully he's not going to bury her any other situation. Okay. Okay. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, says Rabbi Yehuda, Afilu ani shibi Yisrael, lo yifchot mishnei chalivin umekonenet. And even the poorest man, who Israelite man, should have no less at the funeral of his wife than 2 chalivim, 2 flutes, and 1 female mourner, 1 female wailer. Okay, that's the point. Okay, now we go. Okay, right? Now what happens? B'kesav minalan, how do we know that it's the father that gets the money? Amar Rav Yehuda, he says as follows, Amakra, based on the following verse. V'yatza chinam ein kasef. Okay, the pasuk says goes out free and there's no money. Ein kesef la'adon zeh. There's no money for this master.
This is a girl who was sold.
Okay, well, we'll get to it in a second. Michael, hold on. Okay, we'll get the second. Okay, v'yesh kesef la'adon acher. But there is money to another master. So what are we talking about? We're talking about a situation where, let's say there was a young woman. The father decided to sell her as a maid servant, but not necessarily for the purpose of marriage. Okay, or it could be for marriage to him or marriage to his son.
And
Okay.
they opt out, so they let her go when she's
Okay,
12.
so for whatever reason they decide not to let her go, there is no money paid to that master. But is there money paid to another master? The Gemara tells us yes. Umano, and who is it? Aviha, it's her father. Okay, because he has the responsibility for
So
it.
even if she's a naira, the father can
Can
keep
get
her.
Right? Ve'ema ledida. But I might say it, maybe it should go to her. So the Gemara continues. Hashta avia mikabel kiddusha. But here we say that the father receives betrothal monies, dichtiv as it's written, at bitina tati leish hazeh, that I've given my daughter to this man, namely, ihi shakla kaspa. Shall we say here that she's the one that receives the money? Ve'ema, and I would say, hani mili katana. Maybe what we're only talking about is the fact that she's a minor, delete la yad, where she has no hand. In other words, she has no authority, no power. Okay, aval na'ara de'it la yad, but a girl who's between 12 and 12 and a half that has some power, has some authority, namely at that point she's considered somewhat parallel to an adult, and
She
therefore can make a
transaction,
kinyan, right? She can make a, right,
right.
right? She can make a contract of some kind, right? Ihi tikdash nafsha, that she is able to betroth herself, v'ihi tishkol kaspa, and therefore she should be the one to receive the money. Okay, Amar Kra, but the pasuk says Benu'ura Beit Aviha. But the pasuk says in her, I'm going to use the word youth here, so to speak. She is still part of her father's household. Okay, Kol Shevach Neurim LaAviha, that any benefit during the time of this
Period of
youth does
goes
belong to
to
the
the
father.
father.
Okay. Ve'ela rather, says the Gemara, the Amar Rav Huna, Amar Rav. But what about what Rav Huna said in the name of Rav? Minayin shema'aseh habat la'aviyah. How do we know that the actions, the earnings of the daughter go to the father? Shene Amar, as it says, v'chi yimkor ish et bito la'amah. Let it be that if the man sells his daughter as a servant, ma'amah ma'aseh yadeha lirabah, the same way the work of, or handiwork, whatever we want to translate it, of this maid servant goes to her master. Afbat ma'aseh yadeha la'aviha. So likewise, the handiwork of the daughter is going to go to her father. So the Gemara says, Lamali, why is that being the case? Tepuk le mi benu'ureha beit aviha. Why did you have to cite this other verse? Why can't you derive that from the verse that we've already cited, namely, when in her youth she's still part of her father's household? Ela rather, hahu Bahafarat nidarim hu dichtiv, because that pasuk of Benu'ureha Beit Avia is applied to when we're dealing with the question of the father's responsibility to nullify her vows. Okay, v'chi tema, and if you want to say nilef mineh, let us learn it mimamona, from an example of money. Mi'isura lo yalfinan. We don't learn prohibitions
We
from
don't learn monetary
Terry,
laws
from
Easter
prohibitions. Okay,
Fresh
right.
Nedarim is Easter
right.
Behetzer.
V'chi tema, and if you want to say nilef miknasa, let us learn it from the example of a fine. Mamona miknasa lo yalfinan. We don't learn issues of monetary compensation and other things from fines. We already know that. Remember, the Gemara has told us knas is a chidush. Right, right. The chitema, and if you want to say nilef mi boshet hupagam, let's learn it from the example of the payment of specifically of unique compensations monetarily, humiliation and degradation, that money may go to the girl because she's the one who suffered the humiliation and the degradation. The Gemara tells us, Shani boshet upagam, da'avi hanami shayach ben. Why? Because there's also humiliation and degradation that affect the father, the family,
And he would have
as
to
well.
pay that too.
Okay, and the man would have to pay that as well. Okay, so what happens? Ella rather the following: Mistabra the et rachmana. Okay, we understand therefore that when the Torah defined this, okay, Yitziyah the kavta kamima et, that it was her going out regarding her, that's what it was defining, that was what it was limiting. Vaha lo dam yaha yitzia laha yitzia. And here we're saying there's no comparison between the going out of this one, namely the
Slave
maid
girl.
servant, versus the going out of this one, namely the daughter. Okay, so what happens? Hatam gabi adon nafkala mirshute legamre. There, in that case, from the master, she goes out of his authority completely. Yitziyah da'av akati mechasra mesira lechupa. Okay, whereas going out from the reshus, or the authority of the father, there's still something lacking because he's the one who gives her in the chuppah. Okay. So what about another example? Mehafarat nidarim miha nafkala mirshute. But I might say from the responsibility of the father to nullify her vows, she goes out from his authority. Ditnan. Why? Because the Mishnah teaches na'araha me'urasa, the regarding a young woman who is betrothed, aviha uba'ala mefirin la nidareha, that her father and her husband, or her fiance, are the ones that nullify
They
her
have to
vows.
work together.
Right,
to
to do
nullify.
it to them. Okay, let's finish up a little bit, and then we'll be done today. Shtar ubia. What about the other two methods of contracting a marriage? Minalan, how do we know this? Amarkra, says the pasuk, Vaita laish echad, namely these acher, Vaita laish acher, and she then goes to another man. Itkush havayot lahadade. Okay, in other words, he shows the different means of marriages are compared. One is compared to the other. The same way you said it applies to kesef, so it applies to the other methods, shtar and bia as well. Okay, zakai b'mitziata, and we'll just go over that. It says he merits what she finds. Why in the top of Mem Zion? Mishum Eva, so that there is no ill feeling, bad will, anger, etc., in that
No,
situation.
if the father is responsible to feed, clothe, etc., the little girl, and she found a pot of gold, so now she's much richer than he is,
Well,
but he still has to pay for her.
yeah, but they didn't have leprechauns around then.
Excuse me.
What?
Excuse me. What did Korach have?
Who?
Korach had so many.